Well guys, just like that, Battlefield Season 3 is coming to an end with update 1.3.3.0. However, while tomorrow is the final content update for Season 3, it's most likely going to be one of the most impactful in terms of gameplay we've seen in months. So between bug fixes, new content, and massive changes to gunplay, let's talk about what players should expect tomorrow morning with the final chapter of Season 3, titled High Value Target. But before we jump in, if you enjoy in-depth reviews and discussions about all things Battlefield and FPS, drop a like and hit subscribe, and let's talk High Value Target. So first things first, tomorrow's update will become available to download at 8 AM UTC, which is 4 AM Eastern. Then 4 hours later at 12 PM UTC, or 8 AM Eastern, all of the new content goes alive. So if you're planning on jumping in before work, this update drops at 8 AM Eastern just like always. Now content-wise, this isn't some giant expansion with new maps or weapons, but instead is building off the content that was delivered earlier in this season. DICE seems to have taken a different approach, focusing High Value Target on improving the game that already exists. And personally, I think that's the right move because of how much of a mess the game currently is, like I spoke about in my mid-season impressions. But on the bright side, we're getting in the new wet work event, Tactical Obliteration returns to the franchise, Casual Battle Royale joins RedSec, there's a new melee weapon on the way, and upcoming free trial period to hopefully bring in some new players, and then underneath of all of that sits one of the biggest gameplay updates we've seen since release. Because ultimately the headline here isn't really the seasonal update, it's the gunplay. For months now, we've talked about Battlefield 6 feeling underdeveloped, and creators like Enders have been screaming from the rooftops for changes. Sometimes weapons felt laser accurate, sometimes they felt random, hit reg has been inconsistent, players have been dying around corners, servers have struggled with latency, and nearly every major update has introduced just as many bugs as it fixed. Which was honestly my biggest criticism throughout Season 3. The content itself has actually been pretty great. Ranked has been a fun addition to the Battlefield experience, Railway to Goldmid has been a fantastic new map, Cairo Bazaar is enjoyable despite its visibility issues, and the game's content cycle has picked up its pace. But at the same time, the technical foundation hasn't kept up, and that's something I've talked about a lot recently. It feels like DICE has been operating under this move fast and break things philosophy. Every few weeks, we'd get another balance patch, another recoil adjustment, another visibility update, another hotfix, another discussion around time to kill. And after a while, it became difficult to even keep track of what the intended Battlefield experience was supposed to be. That's why tomorrow feels different, hopefully representing a huge step forward. Thus tomorrow, instead of tweaking one weapon or buffing some attachments, they're going after the entire gunplay ecosystem. The biggest change being the general TTK. Now, before anybody panics, this is actually a little more nuanced than simply making every weapon weaker. DICE says the average experience TTK is going to be a little slower, but the fastest possible TTK isn't really changing, and they're doing it by rewarding accuracy. Damage to the chest remains mostly the same, headshot multipliers have actually been increased on automatic weapons, but leg shots, limb shots, and lower torso damage have all been reduced. So what this means is if you're spraying into somebody's legs or catching a bunch of shots in the arms, you'll generally need about one extra hit to secure the kill. On the flip side, players who consistently keep their sights on the upper chest and head should win gunfights more often than before. And personally, I like this direction, but worry DICE is going to fuck it up. Instead of simply increasing health pools or making every gun weaker across the board, they're trying to increase the skill gap. Good aim gets rewarded, and if they can pull that off correctly, gunfights should feel more satisfying. Now paired alongside that are some massive recoil changes. Almost every automatic weapon in Battlefield has received reductions to recoil variation, which is an important distinction because this isn't reducing the recoil itself, it's reducing randomness. Weapons should behave much more consistently from magazine to magazine, So instead of wondering whether your rifle is suddenly going to kick left or right halfway through a burst, you should be able to learn each weapon's recoil pattern much more naturally. That means less RNG and more player skill from a larger point of view. Next up, almost every primary weapon is losing bullet velocity, and bullet drag has been increased by 40%. Thus, shots should slow down over time, and snipers should take a lot more lead. Match-grade ammunition now experiences twice as much drag as before. Long-range engagements are going to require noticeably more leading. Moving targets won't be quite as easy to beam across the map, and all of which should help with maps and modes like Battle Royale, where even SMGs were a death sentence in these haphazardly designed open fields. For months, we've watched players laser enemies from hundreds of meters away with what are supposed to be close-ranged weapons. Now positioning, timing, and target leading become much more important. Long-distance skills should feel earned instead of automatic, and players should be discouraged from even attempting those sorts of shots with things like SMGs. That said, we'll have to see how it actually feels tomorrow morning, because these kinds of systemic changes always look different on paper than they do once millions of players get their hands on them. On top of that, dispersion has also received a major overhaul. High damage weapons become less forgiving if you simply hold the trigger. Meanwhile, lower damage weapons stay relatively forgiving. So again, burst firing and good recoil management will always win the fight. That's the direction DICE wants Battlefield to move. Snipers across the board also received adjustments. Sweet spot ranges have been reduced across every bolt-action rifle, so landing those one-shot torso kills now requires much more intentional positioning instead of sitting extremely far back. It's a small change, but one that should create a healthier sniper play across multiplayer. Now, while gunplay is stealing the spotlight, there's another section of these patch notes I'm honestly just as excited about: netcode. If you've played Battlefield recently, you already know exactly what I'm talking about. Being shot behind cover, delayed hit markers, enemies teleporting during gunfights, damage arriving all at once, rubber banding, server desync. It's been one of the biggest complaints from the community throughout Season 3, and something that's made some matches of Ranked totally unplayable. Tomorrow, DICE says they've improved server-side damage handling, reduced delayed damage corrections, prioritized nearby enemies with network bandwidth allowance, improved time nudge behavior, sped up hit confirmations, reduced rubber banding, improved synchronization between client and server, and made enemy position updates more accurate under poor network conditions. Now, will all these problems disappear overnight? Probably not. These are all things we've heard before. But this is one of the largest networking-focused updates Battlefield has received, and hopefully what the update lacks in content, it makes up for with networking. And if even half these improvements work as intended, combat should feel more responsive, which is arguably more important than adding another weapon, because no amount of content matters if gunplay doesn't feel reliable. And I think DICE is finally trying to understand that. Thus, that's really the theme of this update. Instead of chasing flashy headlines, they're trying to improve the experience players already spent hundreds of hours in. That's also true for RedSec, where looting has been cleaned up, second chance redeploys are smoother, entire squads should redeploy together more consistently, mission flow has been improved, HUD clarity has been updated, and menus have been cleaned up. Even vehicle combat has received another balancing patch with adjustments to tanks, helicopters, IFVs, anti-air, RPGs, smoke systems, and countermeasures. It's one of those updates where almost every system in Battlefield receives some level of refinement, and honestly, that's encouraging. Because if you've watched my channel recently, you know I've been pretty critical of Battlefield's technical state. Not because I dislike the game, quite the opposite. I actually think Season 3 has been Battlefield's strongest season yet in terms of content. But that content has consistently been overshadowed by server issues, bugs, inconsistent balance decisions, hit reg problems, visibility complaints, and the feeling that the developers were fixing one issue while accidentally creating two more. Tomorrow feels like DICE taking a step back and focusing on stability before they add in naval warfare. Now, whether they completely succeed, we won't know until thousands of players jump on tomorrow morning. But based on these patch notes, I genuinely think they're focusing on the right things. Better gunplay, better networking, better consistency, better readability, and better quality of life. Those are all kinds of updates Battlefield needs heading into whatever comes next after Season 3, which is looking like a pretty sizable update for Season 4 in Naval Combat, which I'll be covering later on this week. So tomorrow isn't the biggest content drop we've ever seen, but it might end up being one of the most important updates Battlefield 6 has received since release. But guys, let me know in the comments below what you think of the gunplay changes, and for everything else Battlefield, drop a like and hit subscribe, and as always, thank you guys for watching.